Hey guys, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Good. I know Matt is not able to make today's meeting and Jeff is not able to either.
Okay, maybe we'll just give it a minute or two. I don't know if maybe people are already on vacation, but
Probably.
see if we get anybody else joining us. And hopefully we'll try to make it quick. I'm trying to keep my leave schedule as much as possible.
I know. I feel bad that you're even here.
No, it's okay. But that is a note. I was not planning to be at the June 2nd full body meeting, have Matt run that meeting.
Got it. Okay.
So I want to make sure we reinforce that to him so that can happen.
Got it.
I think we mentioned it, but I know sometimes these things sort of fall by the wayside, and if I end up running the meeting, I'll be disappointed in myself.
Yeah. No, that shouldn't happen. I'll email Matt after this too and just make sure.
Okay.
I'm sure he's expecting that too.
I think he is. I sort of thought maybe that's why he was like, oh, well, and it looks like we have quite a robust agenda shaping up. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. I don't know that we have folks clamoring to come in. And if they do, we can always backtrack if we need to. So let's just take a look. Oh, there's Shelley.
Yeah, my main questions are really just about the
everyone.
agenda for next week.
Okay.
And then I think the other stuff, there's not too much in the way of work group updates. So
yeah, that's what I figured. That's why I figured we probably weren't seeing a lot of others joining us because I think those have kind of hit a certain spot, right? And until this meeting. Okay. So do you want to walk me through your questions about the agenda? Hi, Chad.
yeah, sure. So I think the beginning part of the meeting will be good. Welcome minutes. I'm going to try to send those around later today. And then in terms of the budget update, I can talk a little bit more in detail with Matt about what that means, but
Yeah.
I guess is that just sort of like, we know what's for Reading in the proposed budget, whatever the update is.
So we voted on the budget this week. So the
Oh, yeah.
budget, apart from the grant and aid and the supplemental bill, are set.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So the appropriation overall for Reading matches, what we spoke to before. So, we had talked about the potential for shifting it all to operating budget, but in discussions with the Controller General and OMB, this is what we can report out. We're keeping the same sort of ratio that was proposed in the governor's recommended budget. And I would say we have a commitment that as of the next fiscal year, everything should be in operating. So that's positive.
Okay.
And
do you know what the ratio was between the one-time and the operating?
I don't remember precisely. It's like over 10 million in operating and then a couple million in one-time funds.
Great.
So it's definitely much more of it is in operating, which is fantastic. But then there's a portion. Yeah. And then of course it's been up to us. We've been working, I say we, but really like work group leads and such have been working on spending plans that we've been providing to the OMB and the Controller General. Part of what we voted on includes the epilogue language that pertains to wraparound services in pre-K. Mm-hmm. So people can take a look at that, and it's been voted on, so it's part of the budget. But if there's any concern, and they were all circulated, so there shouldn't be any concerns. But we always want to make sure we note that sooner rather than later if there are. Mm-hmm. So that epilogue language that sort of governs the RFPs and spending plans is also set. And Great. Then there are sort of some RFP, they're not really budget updates, but RFP updates in terms of just how things are going with the allocation of it, honestly, even existing funds for this fiscal year. Mm-hmm. In anticipation of next. So definitely things have been happening. on that front are getting a little bit more solid. Now, of course, we still haven't voted on the budget as a General Assembly, so it's not, done until it's done.
Mhm.
But it went through that key hurdle of being voted on by JFC. Oh my goodness.
Okay, great. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Yes. So we're getting closer. Say hi.
Oh my gosh,
He was
hello.
being so quiet, sitting on his little floor pillow.
Oh my
He's like, I want
gosh.
to see what's going on.
Oh, so cute.
And his name is Jack, right? Old John. We call him Jack, right?
That's right. That's
So
right.
sweet.
What's going
Oh.
on?
Oh, the yawn. Such a hard morning you've had.
Always. Yeah. We eat, we sleep.
Mhm.
And I try to do the same for the most part.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's helpful. And if Matt needs me to sort of consult with how he wants to deliver that, but he's obviously got beyond a strong grasp on everything that's been going on and how to present it. So
Yeah, I think I can coordinate with him about what he wants sort of on slides and stuff.
yeah.
And I can copy you so you know what's going on, but I wouldn't feel burdened by that. I think we got that.
Okay. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think, and that epilogue included, I mean, not that we necessarily need to talk about this in the general meeting, but for our information, maintains our funding for the consortium and such, so we can, know that our work can continue.
Yeah.
And I think it actually has evolved in the sense that the allocation is now, bless you, going to be split between the universities, so it'll be direct. So that's that's a new thing. I don't know that general public is interested in that, but I think that's an interesting new aspect. So DSU will get a direct allocation for the work on the consortium instead of having to do a pass-through thing.
That sounds awesome. I'm assuming that's awesome.
I think that's great. I don't know.
Yeah.
Shelley, hopefully that's good.
Yeah.
Yes, great news. The red tape from university to university can sometimes stifle the work. So that's going to be helpful just from that front.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. All right, cool. So money stuff coming along. What else, Haley, is sort of big questions hanging over us for this? We've got budget update.
Yeah, that was all really helpful for that. So I can get that information together. So then we wanted an update from DOE, I'm assuming from Secretary Holodick, and Tika was really helpful in finalizing some questions that we want to ask. Awesome. And Tika, you can jump in here too and explain your questions. I think I was just what?
No, I just said yay, Tika, for
yeah.
That's awesome.
So I think there are 4 questions. And I was just wanting confirmation that these look good to go. And then I was going to reach out to the secretary and just make sure he knows, he's aware of these questions beforehand.
Awesome. Tika, do you want to walk us through them?
Sure. They were pretty much just an expansion on the question that we had last week. So just describing what post-COVID learning would look like beyond just, the different LEAs are offering summer program or after-school tutoring, but actually putting a little bit more color to that picture. And then also specifically looking at 3 groups of students. So students that may be below grade level, on grade level, and then above. And then also what type of support is DOE providing to the LEAs in implementing as well as evaluating these different learning opportunities. And then I think it was Jeff that had mentioned too that it would be helpful to ask a little bit more pointed questions around the support that they're offering and what that kind of looks like. So that was what the next question was too. And then the last one was more around the evaluation of that, because when I was talking with Haley, we were talking about how sometimes there's so much going on and so many great things in different places. And then there's also pockets of places that don't have anything going on. And so sometimes we may think that there is something going on or to a more greater detail. But if we don't really kind of take a look at the nuts and bolts of that to know how effective it is. And then there was like a toolkit I also shared with Haley and Matt if they wanted to utilize that or offer that as support. And then the last thing I actually didn't put over with Haley, but I did mention last week was maybe asking how can Reading assist with these initiatives or how can we support their work but also how can families support their work.
Yeah. So is that in the sense of like of ensuring that is it sort of an accountability role that we're anticipating? Are we asking how can we make sure that things get done? Is that the question or?
It's some accountability, but to me, it's more about collaboration, right? So as a parent, I've been sitting waiting to hear about these opportunities, so I haven't necessarily. And again, this isn't all parents, but some parents. I may not have made any movement because I'm still waiting to hear from all these great things that said would be coming down the pipeline months ago, and we've seen no movement of that.
Yeah.
So even going forward, like how can I better support you? So if that's something that's fallen off your radar as a parent, should I check in every couple of months and say, hey, is there anything new coming? Like, what is the best avenue for me to collaborate with you so that we can together make sure that my child and all children succeed?
Okay. So that would be an additional question that we're adding in there. How can sort of families and community engage maybe, and how can Reading support, I think the implementation, right? I mean, I guess obviously we're not talking operationally, but hopefully the question will be interpreted to, I don't know if we can promote things or,
Well, when I think back, like in some of the early pandemic stages, or at least return to school, there was a ton of surveys. And I'm not necessarily saying the surveys were the best way, but there was a lot of input sought into what families would like to see, what their needs were. And then, it was kind of like that was a one-time shot, right? So, just kind of going along, because I think that there's ways that families could also, and even the community could support these efforts, but we just really don't know, what's the best way to do that. So just if we're engaged more collaboratively along the process, instead of getting to now we're like 6 months out and we're like, what was it back in January that was said?
Yeah. So are you envisioning like a potential role, and obviously I'll sort of gut check with Haley on whether or not we have the capacity to do this, but a role for Reading to sort of be part of surveying? Is that what you're thinking? Or are you just sort of saying we'd encourage districts to do that kind of work?
So I hadn't really thought about necessarily Reading serving. That could be an option to think it through, but I was just more along the lines thinking of because we are a body of so many educators and community members that support this work, that there's ways that perhaps we could support them. They may, from a capacity standpoint, waiting to get a piece of data that we might already have, or something along the way. So, or maybe they could say, actually, we don't need anything of you, but thanks for offering. But I'm just curious if there are ways, because it just seems like there become these lulls that we can just kind of help keep the wheels going.
Okay. I think it's a good question. I'm really interested to see how the secretary responds. Okay. So Haley, did you kind of get the questions?
Yeah. I think that makes sense.
How can we engage and support, and how can families engage and support, I think is kind of, making sure this keeps on moving. Awesome. I love it. Does anybody have any questions about the questions?
Yeah, Chuck here.
Uh-oh.
These are great. Hi, these are great questions, but there's a really big operational elephant in the room here, and that is teachers are fatigued. There's program fatigue. There's extra time fatigue. Parents are fatigued. It's hard to get kids to do more and more and more. Yeah. So I think that when we ask the questions, we have to be open to just understanding that.
Okay.
I mean, it's the teacher shortage is, I know in Christina, we got well over 100 positions open right now.
Wow.
For our summer hiring. And I know other districts don't really have that big
that's huge.
Yeah, it is.
Out of what is the overall need?
I don't know. I just heard that number today, and I'm hoping that it's all because we advertise what we call EPERS, our extra pay for extra responsibilities, like every year or two. So I'm hoping it's mostly that stuff. But when I heard that, I was like, oh man, it hit me in the gut.
Yeah.
And it's just so hard. It's to the point where, usually we have to watch our units and make sure we're not going over our allocation. Yeah. I almost don't even have to do that now. We have so many vacancies. I know we're not going to go over our state allocation. So when you just keep all that stuff in mind, it's like, yeah, we can try to hold people's feet to the fire to be accountable to do this and that and the other, but if the staff aren't there, and
Right.
if the parents aren't sending kids to the opportunities, then it's tough. Yeah, the questions do need to be asked, but I think just with the asterisk that we have some understanding.
Is there a question? I mean, is that a question to districts? Is that a question to the secretary? I mean, is that just a statement that needs to be made?
It's everyone in general, I think.
Mhm.
I mean, the shortage we're seeing and the fatigue we're seeing, it's just a universal thing. I mean, you can't, and I'll say blame, but I don't mean it this way, but you can't necessarily blame the districts or the unions
Or
or
the department.
DOE or the higher eds, who are generating, you can't really, it's just an overall situation.
I would
Yeah, no,
agree.
absolutely. Sorry, go ahead, Tika.
I would agree about the fatigue and all over, and that's part of where my thought in the collaboration part even came from, because it's felt across the board. And to be honest, it's the elephant in the room to me that nobody is talking about, that is most dramatically impacting everything everywhere. And so I'm going to put my new role hat on for a second.
What's your new role? I've been a little detached.
Ombuds person.
Oh, right. Duh.
Right?
Sorry.
So yeah,
Right,
so,
Tika.
yeah. So I, as
Brain.
the director of the Ombudsperson program, one thing that has been interesting to me is from families that have shared concerns around bullying and some just even like some climate type issues, whereas in the past restorative practices have been welcomed. Very much so this year, the families are upset about restorative practices being utilized and not necessarily something more punitive, and or conversations around, well, the teachers just aren't dealing with this anymore, or admin's not this or that. And really what it does is it really comes back to that fatigue, and that certain things just were not addressed early on, or just not addressed along the way, or in a very passive manner. And so it spills out to different people, and it spills out to the children, it spills out to the parents, the teachers, the admin. It is all over right now. And a lot of that has to do with pacing, and the fact that when we were in the pandemic, one of the programs that DOE selected was this accelerated learning that is a for-profit curriculum, and their stance was just, nope, nothing to see here, keep moving forward. You don't need to come back to whatever you've missed, just keep moving forward. And I remember when Secretary Bunting was still with us, I said to her at the time, the term itself alone, accelerated learning, creates anxiety in people, because it makes you believe, or makes you feel, as that you're missing something, you need to hurry up, you rushed, you're behind. And that already, from a Maslow perspective over Bloom, does not put you in a very good headspace for learning. And it's like, admin know it, teachers know it. I think the people that don't see the connection quite as much as are the families. And so I've tried to explain some conversations about the big picture. But I think that if we do not seriously address learning loss and the pacing that we are doing now, we are like going down in a dumpster fire quickly. And that was my soapbox.
I think there was a question to you in the chat too, Tika.
I also have a question too, like, how do we put this? I feel like we should put this into a question or into a caveat into the
Yes,
Reading
making it
meeting, to make
explicit.
sure we're not,
Absolutely.
ignoring it.
I agree.
Right, such as like either what supports, resources, et cetera, are needed to counter. I'm just gonna call it, system-wide fatigue.
Fatigue and shortages.
Yeah,
Both, sort of hand in hand.
yeah. I mean, money helps, but it's not going to buy everything. Respect for the profession helps, but it doesn't get you 100%. Additional staff in the buildings helps. I mean, it could be a combination of all this stuff, and it could be, additional sources for instructional and operational support staff, non-traditional. I mean, because we're still training and I don't mean this, I know we have a couple university friends on here. I don't mean that we're teaching teachers exactly the same way that we did in the 50s, but the mechanism's still the same. You go to college, you get your certificates, you do a student teaching, and then boom, you're a teacher. But are there other ways? So
Right.
I'm just throwing that stuff out there. I don't know the answers. I'm part of the engine, just trying to keep the boat from, sinking.
Yeah, no, I think that I look, I think it's great. I don't think there's any reason for us to ignore the elephant in the room. I think we should be explicit about what we're asking. And, I understand the secretary may not have some silver bullet answer at that time, but I think it's really just about being able to surface that question and maybe a little discussion, and maybe we'll actually inspire some solution finding, which is the whole
I
point of
think
this. So,
even if he doesn't have an answer, and I don't necessarily know that I'm expecting even a quick answer because that's just how gnarly the situation is.
Yeah.
I think for me, the most important thing is first owning it. That's where people just are acting like as if this doesn't exist, and
Yep.
everybody feels the pressure. So if we could at least own it and then move to a solution, that would be extremely helpful.
yeah. Yeah, I think people need a space to talk about it, right? And say the words, and we sort of dance around it. So no, I think that's great. So do you guys want to work on words for a question that kind of frames the problem and maybe leaves some room for a little bit of dialogue, or, opens the door for the secretary to maybe offer some, or anyone in the room, quite frankly, to offer further thoughts or solutions?
Were you addressing that to Haley and I?
Well, all three of you, quite frankly, or TKU and Chuck, take a crack at it and, see. If
Yeah,
we can get some
The only
language.
thing is, I'd really like to get the questions sent today, just because
Okay.
people will have off on Monday and then the meeting is Thursday.
Yeah.
So I did like how Chuck framed it. What supports are needed to counter system-wide fatigue and shortages? I think that covered it well, but I don't want to leave anything out.
What do you guys
I
think?
think that's a good summation of it.
Okay, awesome.
Great. All right, good.
Thank you. That was super
That's
helpful.
on. All right, cool. Anything else on the questions?
Thanks. I would just make it what supports and or resources, or supports and resources.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, great. All right, anything else in that section? All right, good. That's okay if not. Did I see someone go off mute? No, okay. Okay, we're gonna skip work group updates, I think. Is that right? Or do we have any?
Oh, so this is just the meeting.
that's the agenda.
So these understandable. No, it's all good. Then I was thinking work group updates from the chairs. I think that should all be good. I think they'll be fairly brief. I'm hoping Namdi is able to join to talk about his legislation that he filed.
Okay.
But
yeah.
I'll check in with him. But if anyone has thoughts about the work group updates, I think they'll be fairly straightforward.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, so talking about the legislative review. So these are all the bills that have been brought forward for consideration for the consortium to take a stand. It is a pretty
Yep.
solid list. That's good.
I know. I was
think
like,
it's
is that too many? But we had
Yeah.
a really good social determinants meeting on May 16th, where we talked about a lot of legislation, and they voted to have the consortium consider supporting these bills. And I was just wondering, does this list look okay? Is it? And then my follow-up question, well, there's really two. One is, when we say we're supporting something or endorsing something, what does that exactly mean? Like, are we putting out a statement and making sure that it's publicly known that the consortium supports something? Or is there any more active role? Like if something is still in House appropriations or something like that, is there a push to get it on, further, or?
I mean, I would think, in my view, if we vote to support a particular bill, I think what we are doing is, yes, putting out a statement. Maybe we put out a statement that contains all of the bills in it. I'm not sure that we need to do an individualized statement for each one. Although I think it would always be nice to sort of have such a statement explain what the bill does and perhaps why that syncs up with our vision and our goals as a consortium. And I think it's perfectly appropriate, to the extent we have the capacity to do that, to encourage, folks who receive our newsletter or are on our Facebook to, follow a call to action to support these bills. So that could be, a post that shows the bills and their status, and, say, encouraging folks to reach out to, whether it's members of a committee or just sort of the General Assembly in general, to advance or to sort of make sure it has been implemented properly in the case of like HCR 82, if we want to do that. So, so yeah, I mean, I think we should be making a public statement and encouraging, any onlookers who are so inclined to take action to ensure these bills are actually passed before June 30th.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think we can just do that through our usual communications mechanisms. A statement, and it might take a little legwork, but I don't think we have to overtax our capacity to do that. Just simple, here's the bills, link to the, their status pages, and encourage folks to reach out.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Anybody have any other thoughts on that? Or I'm open to other ideas. That's just sort of what I assumed. I think that's how we approached it last year. And I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think are we seeing any from working groups recommendations to oppose specific legislation? Because I mean, I think in terms of us taking a position, it could be of support, but it could also be of opposition. I don't want to be closed off to that.
That's true. We didn't frame it like that at the social determinants meeting. But yeah.
Just in case that sort of comes up in the context of the meeting.
Right.
I don't want us to be blindsided, but if someone wants to make a motion that we oppose it and it passes, then, I think we just have to consider that could be a position that we're also taking.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
I defer to the body.
That's a good question. I agree. And
So we probably want to make sure we have, I mean, we could do a motion to vote on these as a package, but I would guess that people might want to, are these all from social determinants? Okay. Are we expecting any more to come? Oh,
I don't think so. And settlement did discuss a few of these bills too, but they didn't do the process of actually voting to have the consortium look at them, but they reviewed some of these bills as well.
so these are coming as a recommendation to support from social determinants, all of these. Okay.
Yep.
Maybe that looks like a brief overview of each bill and then a motion to support them all. And then I guess if anyone during discussion would like to say, I want to vote individually on one of these, we could sort of pull it and take a separate vote. But I think probably most expedient for the meeting would be to try to vote on it as a package, unless someone has a specific concern with any specific bill. And if they do, we can just pull it out for its own motion. Does that sound good?
I think that makes sense. Yeah. Because I was worried about just the timing of how much
Going
time
one
it would
by
take
one.
up. Yeah, if we did one by one.
Yeah, I would say trying to like talk through each one in less than a minute, and maybe sending something preliminary. I mean, I would say just send it with
the
maybe we can
minutes.
send out to the membership each bill with its synopsis
Mhm.
and a link to the status page if they want to actually look at the bill itself.
Yep.
And then so we'll give them ample time to check out these bills, and then just a very quick, slides with the even briefer version of the synopsis probably,
Mhm.
that we can sort of march through and then take that vote on a package, but give folks the opportunity to say, I have concerns about 301 or I have concerns about 317.
Sure.
Happens, we'll just yank it, vote on the rest as a package. That's how we do it in like JFC and stuff. So that, I think that's a good approach. Trying to get as much under one vote as possible.
Right.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions about our approach to taking a position on bills?
No question, just a comment / request for the slide decks when you do them is, just put a very brief description of what each is. Don't just do the HB or SB or whatever
Yeah.
number.
Yeah.
HB 1, 2, 3, legalizing marijuana or whatever, or
Yeah.
whatever.
I'll show you. This is
Yeah, are we
how it
voting
looks.
on that one? No, just kidding.
No, not here.
No, we're not. I know we're not.
Can you guys see the
Oh,
Oh,
difference?
yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah,
really
so this
good.
is how the social determinants PowerPoint looked. So I was gonna do something similar, make sure this was all up to date, number, sponsor, synopsis, status.
That was awesome.
That's awesome. That's what I mean, like funding for pre-kindergarten spec. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, great.
That it has the status and everything. That's excellent. So that it's half done. All right, cool. Anything else on that one?
Those were all of my questions. That was very helpful.
Okay, cool. And now we did, how should we vote?
Are
And
all those bills on the ready list? Like, or do
it
you know?
depends, bill to bill. Some are probably, some may not have even have gone through committee yet, right, Haley?
Yeah, I have to check the latest status for all of them, just because I updated it for the social determinants meeting, but I have to check.
Okay.
I think, yeah. But when I'll send an email out to all consortium members with the most updated list, so then you can know what the status is.
Thank you.
Nice. We're all house bills, I'm noticing. All right.
Yeah,
Um,
they are. That's true.
Like, what is going on? That's all right. That gives me some homework. So, okay. I
We
think
just-
that looks good. I think it's a great agenda. Even though I'm not supposed to run the meeting, I don't see how I could not come and cast a vote or two here. So, although maybe I shouldn't because I'm, going to be voting on them. But okay, so do we have, just sort of throw it out for anyone on the call from a work group, if there are any work updates you think that we need? Otherwise, I'll assume there are not. I don't think so, right? We've been pretty up to date on that. And with that, I will say, I see we have Mr. Davis and Larissa on the call. Anyone want to make a public comment on or off camera? Don't
Yes,
feel pressured.
Hi, everybody. Could I
Hi,
ask
good
just a
morning.
question? Tizzy, I'd really love looking at that baby.
Me too.
I'm sure. What is the relationship? And if this isn't for now, just shut me down, please. What is the relationship between Reading and the Wilmington Learning Collaborative?
Good question. I don't know that we could answer that right now. I think we definitely understand that's something that we want to answer. There have been some conversations about what the actual linkage between the two look like, because we are separate. And I think sometimes that becomes confusing. We are not behind the Learning Collaborative or, in front of it. And so I think there will probably be some kind of liaison type of relationship. There was epilogue language passed this week that actually probably says the most explicit thing, linking the two bodies, just that we need to coordinate the way that we're deploying our resources to make sure that we're doing it in a complementary way. So that'll probably be the catalyst for some more formal, structured way for us to relate to one another. But we are separate entities that are not, we don't share planning or anything like that at this time. So, but I think the expectation obviously is that we're trying to do work that is complementary and very, very aligned. So at some point, I'm sure we'll have at a meeting an opportunity to talk about how we're going to actually operationalize that, but we don't have anything to report yet.
No, thanks. That makes a lot of sense because a lot of what Reading is proposing and stands for are things that could benefit those schools as well, right?
Definitely. And I think vice versa. I think some of the longer range reforms that we're hoping to work on, I think could definitely
Exactly.
be informed and benefit from how things are playing out in the collaborative. That's my point of view anyway. I guess we'll see what the whole consortium thinks. All right, great. Thank you for that question. And if there's anything, oh, hello, Mr. Davis, how are you? Great to
How
see
are
you.
you?
I'm doing great.
Well, both of you, congratulations. First.
Thank you.
That makes my day just seeing that. Yeah, I was just I don't know. There's just so much to talk about, but Ms. Hartsock was talking about the elephant in the room, and I think that's the real deal. Taking the time and having the courage to really talk about the elephant in the room, and we've kind of miscalculated things right from the very beginning, just assuming that when COVID hit, the online strategy was a good strategy, is probably the best strategy that we had, but the assumption that teachers could just make that switch and have deliver quality education without any kind of training it's ridiculous. So in a sense, we set ourselves up both for increasing the learning gaps, because COVID just exposed so many inequities. And then also the learning loss that is going to continue, until we do something. And all of that is tied to the teacher shortage, right? You're asking teachers to do the impossible, and they're already doing that, and they're underpaid in doing it. And now you have a pandemic, and you're asking them to save the day for the next generation without any training. And so you wonder why there's such a teacher shortage. I do hiring fairs, virtual hiring fairs right now. We started during the pandemic and really focusing on diversity hiring fairs, but that has been helpful because we've been able to reach people from all around the country to apply to different schools. But like Chuck was saying, first of all, the solutions are going to have to be at least as serious as the problem, right? So as Mr. Longfellow was saying regarding just new ways to develop teachers, we have to consider that. We have to consider getting teachers help if we can do that. Coaches in the room, coaches for teachers. Who helps the helper? So who is actually helping the teachers and their social, emotional development, as they go through this process? And we haven't even begun to talk about how that translates to the families, right? So there's a lot to do, but it's doable, but not until we talk about the elephant in the room. And I mean, seriously. So
I agree.
that's my 2 cents.
I'm glad we have that on the record. I hope you come on the 2nd and maybe repeat yourself with the broader group, because I think all your points are very well taken. So
I don't do good at repeating myself.
well, hitting the same notes. But excellent, thank you. I really appreciate that. And hopefully we can be part of the solutions with some of the stuff we already have, some of the resources we already have coming down.
Well, I think part of that, aligning the resources that we have is part of that, making an effective solution. But you can't do that without accurate goals.
Yeah.
And you can't have accurate goals if you don't talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it is all connected.
To that point, what I noticed, it seems to be, and maybe I'm just not in the right conversations, but we're only looking at the immediate parts, and that we actually need to jump ahead and then plan backwards. And I think that's why we keep getting tripped up, is we're just putting band-aids and dealing with it right in front of us.
Yeah, just putting out fires. Yeah, it would be so nice to actually get ahead of things for a change, but the last few years have not necessarily made that easy. So I'll give us a little bit of a break on that, but we need to learn from that and do better. Excellent. Well, should be a good meeting. All right, everyone. If no one has anything further, I think we can wrap up. All good? All right. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you all. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and see you on the other side.
Thank you. You too.
Right.
Be well.